Welcome to the Ordinary Marathoner podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Ordinary Marathoner podcast. My name is Coach Scott. I'll be your host today. Guys, I got a great show for you today. I got a great guest. My camera's on here. I got to make sure I don't bounce the camera up and down off the desk here. I tend to get a little animated when I talk, you know? It's kind of like my thing. Anyway, I got a great show for you today. I got a great guest. Going to bring him on in just a minute. As always, you can find this in the back episodes of our podcast at our website, ordinarymarathoner.com. Check that out if you get a chance. You can also find them at the aggregators, places like Stitcher, TuneIn, iTunes, all that good stuff. If you like what you see, hit that subscribe button. You can also find us over at the YouTube channel, Ordinary Marathoner. Got a lot of stuff going on over there. We have our live streams from Thursday Night Rides. I'm now waking up in the morning at like 5 a.m. and getting an FTP builder training program in. Start my day nice and fresh, nice and, on the right foot. It's been going good so far. We're 2 days into it. I'm 2 for 2, getting up early, and we'll see how that goes. So, if you like the YouTube channel, and you don't want to miss anything new, head on over here, hit the subscribe button there as well. All right, my guest here today, he's insane. I think he's crazy. I don't really know him too well. I just been, Ben Hinton, our multi-time podcast guest, said he set me up with this guy. He said, "Hey, you got to meet this guy." And then I started watching his page, and the guy he's just a running machine. Matt Scoletti, welcome to the show, Matt.
It's great to be here. I'm excited, Scott.
Well, I'm excited to have you. Ben said I had to follow what you were doing. I'm like, all right, what's this guy doing? Ben, he sends me lots of stuff. So, sometimes I'm like, all right, what's Ben sending me today? So he sends me, he sends me your page, and I started following it, and it's like, here's a guy with a sign. It's like August 8th, and it says marathons run in August 8. Is that real?
That is real. That is definitely real. And as we're sitting here today, I don't think my legs have ever felt like this before. And I got like ice bags on my knees right now. So it is real, and it's been an interesting month. That's for sure.
So how did this come about? Is this some kind of challenge? One of the things I'm always guilty of is I don't do enough homework on my podcast. So I kind of got a feeling, because we did have a little bit of a chat before the podcast, but why don't you tell everyone sort of the reason behind what you're doing and just give us a little flavor.
Yeah, for sure. So I ran my first marathon in May of 2019, and I loved it. I actually ran one 3 or 4 weeks after that in Cleveland. I'm in Pittsburgh. So I ran the Pittsburgh first, then Cleveland, and I just fell in love with running. And I've been running marathons since then. And I ran my first ultra, 100-mile ultra, April 24th and 25th during COVID. So I ran the whole thing on our 1/3 of a mile street. So I had to run up and down our street like 238 times or something ridiculous. But it was painful, but I loved it. And so I keep trying to find these new challenges for myself. And this one just happened to play out perfect timing and just seemed like the right thing to do, which is we came up with this in like mid-July, end of July. And the idea was, in the month of August, we're going to try to raise money for my wife's charity, which is called Young Adult Survivors United. She helps young adults aged 18 to 39 that are dealing with cancer, and she helps them financially, socially, emotionally. And I wanted to do my part to raise money for her charity. So the idea was that every $10 that was donated to her charity, I would run 1 mile. And I've done some fundraising before, and I know that there's a lot of generous people in the world. I just didn't know how generous they were going to be in this situation. So very quickly, as I put this out to the world the last day of July, I think, I got like almost $2,000 of donations. So that's 200 miles right off the bat. And I'm thinking,
immediately regretting that decision.
Oh yeah. I'm like, oh my God. Like I'm joking because I'm saying, why are these people so generous? It's like, I don't know if I think it's a combination of them being generous and my friends wanting to see me go through mass amounts of pain. So I think it's a little bit of both. But so I'm already 200 miles in the hole, and I'm like, why don't I just try to run a marathon? I'll max out at 26.2 every day. and then just see if I can do it again tomorrow. And it started out just as I would try to run 2 in the same weekend, Saturday and Sunday. And then I thought, okay, I feel like I could keep going. And I'm running slow. Like, I'm not running 3.5-hour marathons. I mean, I'm running a slow, steady pace, but I'm just trying to keep up with the donations, which I'm still not up to speed with how many people have donated. So it's kind of turned into this sick game that I'm just challenging myself to see how far I can run. It's pretty wild.
That's crazy. But what an interesting cause. We do a virtual race every year, and we do it for a charity. The last 2 years, we've done it for a charity called the SAM Fund, which is a grant-based charity that helps cancer survivors in the same the same young adult kind of, them.
Yeah. Well, my wife, I'm pretty sure they know one another. I think I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah. So we've been raising money for the SAM Fund for the last 2 years. Oh my God. Samantha Watson, her father, I actually coach her father. He's going to run Boston Marathon next year. But what it is it's a segment of the population. And the way I think that she put it to me was there's a lot of charity. There is a lot of money for cancer related causes for kids, and a lot of money for cancer related causes for adults. And then there's that zone in the middle that doesn't really get a lot of attention. And in particular, it's that age group that you're falling off of your parents' insurance. And if you're going through issues at that moment where you're falling off your parents' insurance and you can't work because you're in treatment, it can be even more stressful than normal. So, I just from knowing that and knowing, and dealing with the SAM Fund, that's a very highly regarded cause, from this neighborhood for sure.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I got to talk to my wife about that because I'm almost positive they're like tight and they know each other very well. And actually, to that point, my wife is a 15-year this year leukemia survivor. So she has she got diagnosed, she was 19 years old. So right in that young adult teenager life, period in life. And I didn't know before meeting her, I don't know how much you knew, Scott, but I don't think I even thought that people aged 18 to 39 ever got cancer. I didn't know what it would look like if they had it. And I had all these ignorant, naive, I didn't know anything about it. And now, having been married to her for over 4 years now, and being around these young adults battling, it's like they're like you and I. I mean, they're happy-go-lucky. I mean, they're active and doing what they can. And it's just, I had such a wrong idea of what a young adult battling cancer may look like. So I know some end up, the story does not end well, but a lot of the young adults with my wife's group, knock on wood, they're fighting this thing as best that they can. So it's inspiring to see them battle every single day, to be honest.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, it's, I think the sad part for me is when I see, Glenn Eisenstein is he's the guy I coach. And when he ran a few marathons before, and he has a jersey that he wears that has, a dozen or so names on it of the people that he knew through the cancer treatment that didn't make it. And you did mention like they're happy-go-lucky. They were, and to a certain degree, yeah. I mean, I'm sure happy to be alive and happy, and they can be active and they can be out depending on how your everything shook out. But yeah, it is an amazing kind of, it's not really what you picture. It's not like they don't act like victims. They don't, and yet they've gone through such traumatic circumstances that it definitely affects them in ways. So I think it's amazing what your wife is doing. I think, congratulations on cancer free for so long. I'm sure you're thankful for that as well.
Yeah, I sure am. Yeah, well, then I often think to myself, and we'll go in any direction you want with this, but I think when I do some of these fitness events where clearly I'm in a lot of pain, but I always think, okay, I'm doing this for people that are battling cancer. I can't even imagine what they're going through. I can push myself 5 more miles or whatever the mileage is, because they're battling every single day and sometimes for their lives. So I try to put that in perspective when I'm doing some of these more extreme endurance races.
So let me ask you this. Are you going to finish all these miles by the end of the month, or are you kind of like, are you going to be in a debit circumstance here?
I don't know yet. I'll be honest with you, Scott. I thought I would have no problem with this until this flood of donations came in. So I am telling myself this, and I'm going to put this out there to the world and to my social media world. If I don't get them all done by the end of August, I promise you, whoever the donor is, I will eventually get them done. And I swear I'm doing my best, but I don't know anymore. I might not get it done by August. What is there, 31 days in August? I might not get it done by the end of August. I don't know.
It's sort of a good problem to have, for the charity circumstance.
It's a great problem to have. Yeah. I mean, my wife's like, yeah, keep rolling, right?
She's kicking you out the door, right? Get That's a few more miles in.
You have some miles to do, honey. Oh, yeah.
That's awesome. You mentioned your story about your ultra and running like 200 and some laps up and down your block. Man, I mean, what does she think of your running? What does she think? I mean, maybe she kind of has to kind of go with it now that that you're running for the charity and raising money. But that was a good, now that I think of it, that was a good plan on your part. Now you can run and you can train all you want.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh yeah, like it's tied into her success, so she'll let me do whatever I want. You asked a great question. Honestly, I don't get asked that question a lot, which is, what does my wife think? And as you're asking it, I'm thinking in my head, what does she think? I think what happened was, so we started dating back in, 2013. And I did the world's toughest mudder, which is in Vegas in 2014. So it's a 5-mile loop with like 40 obstacles in it. And you just see how many times you can do this loop in 24 hours. So I think it was almost like after she saw that became the quote unquote norm. And now everything doesn't look as crazy as that, looked. So it just feels normal to her. I think that's what it might be. So she'll give me the eye roll every now and then and just say, he's going to do it either way. So I might as well support him, I think. But she's been a rock. I mean, that 100-mile run I did in our neighborhood, she won't admit this, but it's true. She ran with me for 30 of the miles. I mean,
wow,
I'm like,
that's a lot.
Oh, it's insane. And I mean,
does she run too, or was she untrained?
She runs. She had run a half marathon, I think actually just a few weeks prior to that or a few weeks after that. So she's a runner, but she'd never run a full marathon before. So for her to push herself just to support me, I mean, just crazy. I mean, she is a rock and a half.
Yeah, that's amazing. And my wife and I, we run together. Well, not this summer, but in prior summers we have, and this was just a bad year. I just want to erase this year anyway. But it does, it helps your relationship when you can kind of understand at least that what the other person's going through in terms of running, because I think to a lot of us it just means a lot. Your running, your discipline, your achievements, all that stuff means a lot, and you need that person in your corner cheering you on. It sounds like you have a very healthy relationship in that way.
Yeah, you're right. And that's a huge help. I mean, to be honest, I've never been with someone that hasn't supported that, because as soon as I started doing these events is when I started dating Steph. So I feel for somebody that maybe doesn't have quite the support that I have, because she's been there through it all. But as you said, I think jokingly, but kind of serious, she is benefiting from my pain as well. So yeah, she's getting some donations coming in.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that I mentioned the Sam Fund and you thought it was a coincidence that you guys think that, you might know Samantha Watson, but you also mentioned your wife's name is Stephanie, and in which case that's another coincidence, because so was mine.
That is bizarro. This is a bizarro. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy.
Crazy.
Yeah, that's right.
But so let me ask you this. All right. So you're doing all these miles and you're doing this, day after day after day. Well, first thing, are you running, when go out and you run your marathon in the day, are you splitting them up, or are you trying to do it all at once?
That's a great question. And in the ideal world, I would do it all at once. Sometimes with meetings, Zoom calls, whatever, I split it up. So I don't mind splitting it up. I'm actually starting to like more running, 10, 15 miles in the morning, and then the rest of the miles at 5, 6, 7 p.m. So, and especially if it's hot out, I mean, the nicest time to run for me is 5:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. and then 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. So I'm trying to do them all at once if I can. If not, then I will split it up. So of the whatever 15, 16 times I've run, I think 5 have been split up, and the other 10 or 11 have been all at the same time.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think they all count. I think they all count.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm not looking to take away any credit. Did you now? You met another thing. I'm kind of like I'm trying to piece this story together, and you mentioned that you casually mentioned, oh, we started thinking about this in like mid to late July, which is like the month before August. That was like a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
Because my next question was, did you train for this? I mean, you clearly you're trained a little because you did a 100-mile race in April, but did you train for this at all? Was this ever a possibility before mid-July or what?
That's a great question too. And the answer is yes. I mean, I think during this whole COVID thing, like when this started happening, I went out and I had been running a lot, and I ran a marathon just by myself at this park as soon as COVID started. And I put it out there on social media saying like, I'm running this marathon. And it almost felt like it was me just trying to prove to myself and everybody else, you can keep, I'm not saying it's a normal life, but you can keep being active and doing things even in the middle of some negativity or a pandemic like we had going on. So it almost felt like to me, it was me against COVID, and I'm going to prove to it that I'm going to be safe while I'm doing this and keep my distance from everybody, but I'm going to keep my healthy lifestyle going. So leading up the month of July, I think I ran 5 marathons in July. Like I was running at least 25 to 30 miles on the weekends. So I had definitely been running a lot. I was doing probably 50 miles a week.
Wow.
And then when this idea came up, and again, I didn't think in my head, I'm going to go run 10 marathons in a row. I thought, let's try to do 2. And if I get enough donations in, I'll keep tacking them on. So it just kind of turned into 10. And now we're at 15 in the last 18 days. I mean, that's crazy. And I'm slowing down a little bit. I must admit that.
I was just going to say, so you got ice on your knees, you said. Are you feel like you're running yourself into the ground a bit? Are you feeling like are you risking injury here at all? Are you what's the deal?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I'll be completely honest with everybody. I often will tell the social media world what the next big goal is. And I didn't know what this one was going to be other than 2 marathons back to back. This was probably the most backlash I've got. And really, I guess you'd call it kind of like hate. I don't know that it's necessarily hate, but just more than a few messages on why are you doing this? Like this is going to do more harm than good to you, and you shouldn't be promoting this to the world, blah, blah, blah. And I get it. And I think I've learned over the years to listen to my body. So I promise you, and I promise anybody listening, if something felt off and I just thought that I was injuring myself, I would stop for at least, a week or however long it would take. So I'm going, if I'm starting to feel a little off, I start walking, and I'm not trying to, like you said, push myself to injury, hopefully. But at the same time, after this, like in September, if I get all the miles in August, I've been telling everyone, and I mean it, I will not run a mile in September. I may hop on a bike and swim a little bit, but I will completely shut it down. So I don't want this to come off as promoting to go run 10 marathons in a row, because I don't think that's the case. I'm just doing it because I feel okay to keep going. And if something should feel off, I will definitely cut it.
Yeah. It's kind of like, and I live in this social media world too. And I see all the, it's like some people in social media, they just want to snipe at you for whatever reason.
Yeah.
But it's a legitimate question, I think, to ask you about, about what you could, potential injury. I mean, it's on the front of my brain as a coach. I'm thinking, geez, like I would never coach you to do something like this unless you came to me and you said, look, I really want to do this. This is my goal. And in that respect, this has become your goal. You're an ultra marathoner. You ran 100 miles a couple weeks ago. You're in good shape. You've been running marathons, after COVID. And, sometimes this is the goal. This is the event. This is your thing. So if you embrace it like that, you're risking injury, but just the same way a guy, playing football risks injury every time he steps on the field. You're giving it a go. This is your goal. This is your thing. You're embracing it. And, so my question really wasn't, I think you know this, but it wasn't really like from a you're going to hurt yourself, don't set this example. It was more like hey, what do you what steps are you kind of taking to avoid that? It's kind of weird this social media. I always like feel like I got to kind of like tiptoe around issues and stuff, but right, it's a crazy world we live in.
Yeah, no, it is. But honestly, I'm really glad you asked that, especially for the viewers and listeners, because I want to be open and just say, I don't think it's probably not smart to promote, running that many in a row. And I just want to throw something at you, and because this is how my brain kind of works. I'll give you I don't know if you want to know this or not, but here's how the Matt Scoletti crazy brain works. I'll get some people, and rightly so, and even people that are very close to me say, hey, Matt, what are you going to do, when you're 65 years old and you need crutches or whatever, wheelchair or whatever. And I get that. And I think that's out of love, and they're looking out for me, and I appreciate that. My flip side brain goes like this. What if I'm 65 years old and I look back and go, man, I could have run more when I was in my 30s, and I didn't do it because I was scared that I was going to injure myself. So that's like the seesaw thing going on in my head. And I understand both sides. I think the side that's just winning is the one that says, I could be dead in 2 years. Let's push while I'm healthy enough to run all these miles, and then shut it down with the running for an extended period of time in September and probably even into October.
Yeah. And, when you think about it, I mean, even, I don't know how old you are, but I know when I was a kid, if you wanted to run a marathon, well, you had to be the right body shape, and you had to be the right type of person, and you had to have, and even before that, I don't know, you read stories about how, women weren't fit enough to do it. It was dangerous for women, healthy wise. And now you see like women running 100 miles faster than the men. These long run, I mean, they're insane. It's, and so, and kind of what I mean by that is, we put caps on ourselves, and we tell ourselves that we can't accomplish these things. And then it turns out that years later, well, you know what? If no one would have tried to do that based off of advice on somebody else, then nobody would have ever run a 50K. And no one would ever run a 50 miler. And nobody out there doing 200-mile races anymore. And these things are insane. They're amazing. They're incredible feats of endurance. But if we listen to all the advice that we got, we'd never be anywhere. Women would still be not running marathons. And you think about that and the state of the sport today. And but in fairness to what you're saying, yes, I do think that there's a lot of good advice within that care of making sure that you're okay and making sure that, everything is good. But it's kind of like, the human body is capable. Typically what you hear is the human body is capable of way more than we think. So,
Yeah. And I just got to stop because I think you made such a good point there. You're in a great role in the best way. I love what you said about, I can't remember, I think I read this somewhere, but if you want to, let's say you want to run a marathon, and I think this is part of why you're a great coach, you get around people that have run a marathon. So now it feels normal, instead of people saying, why would you run 26.2 miles? That's stupid. You get around people that go, oh, here's how you do it. Make sure you foam roll and stretch and ice bath, and then start to encourage you because they've done it before. So I've started surrounding myself with people that have run 7+ marathons in a row, and then can coach me into this kind of multiple ultra or marathons in a row. And now it feels like more normal because I'm surrounding myself with people that have already done what I want to do. So I think you made a great point with that. And, you surround yourself with people that are playing the game where you want to be playing it. And then it just feels more normal versus somebody that has not done it or would just kind of say, that's stupid. Don't do that. So that's why you're coaching. That's why you're so good at it, because you've done it. And then you can teach the people to do it just like you did. I love it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I do think that for most people, you're capable of a lot more than you think you are. And to your point about being around people that that do these kinds of things. I remember when I was running my first marathon, and I remember thinking, man, I'm training for a marathon, and I'm looking at my gym, and I'm thinking, no one here is probably doing a marathon. Like I'm like the only one training for a marathon. I'm like the only one in this group. And then I finished it, and then all these people were like, oh, hey, yeah, I ran a marathon. And I'm like, it turns out that a lot of people did. And then I finished Ironman, and I'm thinking, all right, I'm like the only one in town that ever finished an Ironman. Then I met 5 people, and they got the tattoos, and they got, and
oh yeah.
But then, what happens is you just start hanging around in circles of people that have done the things, and it just becomes normal. It just becomes like a normal thing. And in a way, it's kind of like you said, it's just you're hanging out with people that do the same things you do. But in a way, then you start to think like, hey, I don't stand out much in this crowd. Like when I was just the guy in the gym, maybe I was the guy standing out. But now you're hanging out with just people who have done the things that you do. I mean, and but what you're doing to counter that, what you're doing, I think is amazing. I think it's for a great reason. I think physically, the challenge that you've taken on, I think is daunting and incredible. And just, I just want you to know that. I think it's, like I saw the pictures of you like holding up a sign, and I'm like, what is this guy doing? It's amazing.
Well, I appreciate that. And I agree with everything you're saying. I think the body is definitely capable of much more than I know that sometimes I limit myself. Like you said, we cap ourselves whenever the body's capable. I mean, like you said, 100 miles, 26.2 miles. 2 years ago, I would have said, there's no way I'm going to run 26.2 miles. And then you come up with the reason why you want to do it. And then it just becomes like, okay, I'm not stopping until I run 26.2 miles. So I agree with everything you're saying. I think this is a great topic.
So another thing you mentioned, and don't think I was going to let you get through with this one. September, you said, I might stop running, but I'll do some biking and some swimming. And my mind puts those together and thinks, those are 3 events that kind of go nicely together. Are there any triathlon goals in your future? Are there anything, all right. So you get through August and you've done all these miles and you're doing great. You feel good. And you kind of, now you're easing into some sort of cross training to ease the, the burden that your legs have been going under. This all makes perfect sense from a coaching standpoint, except for the whole August thing. Is triathlon potentially in your future?
Oh, you better believe it. When you said Ironman, I mean, and by the way, you just slide that into the conversation like, oh, yeah, I did an Ironman. I think it's like 0.001% of the population has ever done an Ironman. It's probably less than that. But yes, I mean, as soon as you said it, I probably have 4,000 questions I could ask you about the Ironman, because that's a huge, huge goal of mine. I was actually going to sign up for one in September, and then, COVID canceled it. So I decided to do something crazy with just running instead. But what you've done is a huge bucket list item for me. And I've done a couple triathlon in Pittsburgh. They call them adventure races. So actually they don't do it anymore, but I think 3 or 4 years in a row, it was actually a kayak, then bike, then run, not anywhere near an Ironman length, but it was kind of cool because I don't mind swimming, but it was a different way to sort of get you in the water when you're in a kayak versus swimming. But yeah, I'm Ironman. My ears are perked up and I'm ready. I definitely got to do that next.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly with your endurance, your proven endurance, it's within your wheelhouse. It's within, certainly something you can accomplish. What is it about Ironman that kind of, piques your interest a little bit? Is it something that something you want to do since you're a kid? Is it something, that just like the next step kind of in there?
I'll tell you, I'm so glad you asked that, because here's really the biggest reason it piques my interest. I've biked many miles in my life. I've run many miles in my life. I used to, and I'll tell you a quick story, but I used to have a massive fear of open water swimming. So I swam it was a regular triathlon size, but it was a relay. So two of my friends said to me, this is probably like 5 years ago. They said, I'll do the bike. And then the other one said, I'll do the run. And then they asked me, will you do the swim? And I think it's because neither one of them wanted to jump into the Pittsburgh rivers. So they're like, you do the swim. But that's crazy me. I'm like, sure, I'll swim. Was it 1.2 miles? It didn't sound like it was that long until you're in the water. And what happened was I was ready because I trained in the pool over and over and over again. What I didn't realize was getting in the river just messed with my mind in a way that I was not expecting. So I made it. I mean, I made it to 1.2 miles, but it wasn't smooth and my mind started playing head games. So I actually went for my first open water swim like a month ago since that triathlon 5 years ago. And it went really well, but I love to answer your question, it's because I used to have this massive fear of open water, and I want to overcome that fear and also overcome the fact that I've never gone that far in those three things in a row. So there's a lot of just massive challenges that I feel like if I could do it, it would just be a huge confidence booster and just feels like I got over this obstacle that years ago, there's no way I thought I could do.
And I'll tell you that's a super common experience for people. I remember when I did mine, I remember like there was a chance that I was going to just go up to Lake Placid and jump in the open water for the first time on race day. And some people talked me out of that, and I went and I was glad that I did get an open water swim beforehand, because it's not the same as the pool, and the biggest difference is mental. Getting there and looking out in the distance, you don't see the 25 yards end of a pool. You see a long way down. Right. And, and then you jump in the water and there's no lane markers. There's no space. It's elbows and knees and feet and your face and all that stuff. And you have to kind of figure out how to sight and do all that stuff. And, it is you might be, in some cases you're dealing with cold water, which, if it's earlier in the season, that could be a really stressful thing. But it's not, you shouldn't be upset about having issues in the water, in the open water like that. It's very, very common. I think, when I talk to my athletes who have sort of issues about getting in the water, I always talk to them about practice. And instead of just, if you're out in the open water swim, I'm giving you some coaching here, free.
Please. Yeah. Yeah.
But, so you've done a race, right? You've done a race, you've jumped in the water, you jumped in the river. Put yourself mentally in that place, right? Put yourself in the wetsuit, and visualize your race day, and don't just walk in the water and go swimming. Pretend like it's race day. Visualize all the other people. Visualize and sight and do what you need to do to get used to it, so that when race day comes, getting in the water isn't even a thing for you anymore. You know what I mean? You're over that. You've done it 1,000 times in your brain. That's not even a thing, because even for me, after I've done Ironman races, when I was in Mont Tremblant last year for a half, I remember standing on the beach going, like, thinking to myself, like, I haven't done enough open water swimming, and I don't know if I belong here, and everyone else looks like they know what they're doing, and it can mess with your brain. So open water swimming is definitely something to practice, and like you said, if that's one of those things that drives you to overcome something that's like a fear, I think that's an awesome way to do it.
It's definitely a big driver, and that's a great idea. Just visualize over and over and over again. And like you said, I love that, like mass detail, like detail out how I'm going to feel, overcoming the fear and just swimming in a strong way. I think that's such a good idea. And we actually have here in Pittsburgh, it's like half hour from our house. It's called Moraine State Park. We have an open water swim area. So that's I totally agree with you. And I'm glad that you did it before going into Lake Placid. But even like little stuff like in the pool, you have the goggles on, you can see 20 yards underwater. And I don't know how it is by you, but I can't see 2 feet in front of me in our bodies of water. So even that psychologically, it's such a mind game. But really to me, that's the fun of it. I mean, it's just you can either mentally break down or mentally break through, and I'm hoping it's going to be the latter of those two. But
and
we'll see.
I do. We discussed. I don't know if I don't want to like break any news. I don't know if they're, but we did discuss Ironman Maryland earlier, because I had done it, but I tell you, Ironman Maryland, when it comes to the water and the clarity, there ain't much.
Oh no! Well, that's good.
There ain't much. So I would say Mirror Lake and Lake Placid, you can kind of see, you can follow the feet in front of you. Like you can kind of get that. It's kind of pretty clear. You swallow the water and it's like, that doesn't taste so bad.
Really?
Well, it's pretty clean. In Mont Tremblant, it was a little, I could see my hand, but I really couldn't follow feet. And then in Maryland, I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. I remember at one point they were trying something new. So it was a 2-loop swim, and they funneled everyone through a gate so that they would get your time to make sure that you didn't only do 1 loop, right? So to make sure you didn't cheat. And so they were funneling everyone through this machine that they were just trying out. and it was like a big bottleneck, and people had to stop. You had to kind of stop swimming, but it turned out that you could stand in that area, but you didn't know because you couldn't see the bottom. It was like 3 feet deep, but nobody knew because you couldn't see the bottom. It was that kind of, opaque looking through the thing.
Oh,
but
that's funny. Wait, where's Ventre Blanc? Where is that?
That's Canada. That's up in Canada.
Okay.
Yeah. That was a beautiful race too. A very hilly bike course, but a beautiful race, beautiful town. It was a lot of fun. I did a 70.3 up there. For me, I don't think there's anything better than Lake Placid.
I can't even imagine that. Oh.
The bike is hilly. It's tough. It's challenging. Something you got to work on in training. But the water is it's the most pristine I've ever swum in. So that's my A1. In fact, it's like, you know what? I'm 46 years old, and people ask me, what would be the next ones that you would do? What would what other Ironman race would you do? And for me, it's like, I really don't like the ocean. I don't like the salt water. I'd rather not. The lakes are really nice, and I don't want to take my bike any more than like 5 hours. I don't want to have to like ship my bike in advance or rent a bike. Yeah. So the only way I'd go anywhere out of the Northeast is if it was like Kona. If they were like, yeah, you want to go to Kona, then yeah, all right, then I'll do it. But other than that, I'm a local guy for those things.
We're, as far as bike events, we typically want to drive. Yeah, we're very similar with that. And I have to put this on the record.
Definitely.
I think I subconsciously, when I meet somebody, I don't try to do this, but I kind of put an age on them.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying this to like butter you up. I'm 36.
Yeah.
And I had you pegged for like a similar age as me.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, man. I just got a haircut and stuff. Maybe it's.
No. I can't believe you're 46.
Yeah. Moving on, man.
But that.
I think I'm halfway done, right? I'm halfway done.
Not even. You're not even halfway done.
Well, if I ever want to go to Kona, I got to outlive everybody else, An age group. I got to get to that 100+ age group. I'll be the only one in it.
I'm looking at you. It's just so inspiring to me because I'm like, you're 10 years away from me and you're crushing it. So I'm thinking, I still got some years in my prime to go. You're an inspiration, my friend.
Well, listen, man, you've done 100 miles. I haven't done that one. That's kind of like it's been inching up on me as kind of something that I want to do. And it's, I recently did a podcast and said that I would do an ultra. I was kind of thinking that maybe I could really train quickly and do one fast and like maybe later this year, but I'm starting to think maybe that was a little aggressive. So it might be a 2021 thing, but it's on the radar. It's on the radar.
Oh, you got it. So ultra for you, what we were talking about before the podcast, what's the distance that you would want to go for?
Yes. Well, I've actually told my Fort Lauderdale story a number of times in the podcast. So I told you beforehand of the Fort Lauderdale Ultra, and so I've had these conversations often. And if you're listening to the podcast and you don't know what I'm talking about, then I apologize, but I can't tell the story again. People will just get mad at me. But so afterwards I asked the question, and kind of the feedback I got was that ultra starts at 50K. And I don't know. That's, so I'm thinking, yeah, I can kind of go with that. It makes sense. It's kind of like the nearest round number that's still, even it's K, but it's only, you think only, but it's like 30 something mile, like 31, 32 miles, something like that.
Yeah.
So if you run a marathon already, even if you've run one and been in a lot of pain, it's there. It's there for the taking. It's just, it's another 10K or whatever after that, not even. So I think that's where it starts. I think once I did a 50K, I'm nervous for myself. Like, I don't know where that would go because it could blossom into 50 miles to 100 miles to all that.
Yep. That's what happens. That's what happened to me.
Yeah.
But I think there's a great point in there, what you're saying, which is I did the exact same thing. You run a marathon, and then I'm thinking one of two things. Either A, I try to get faster on the marathon, or B, I run further. And I happen to choose B, just keep running further. But I think your point of, some people have asked me, how do you run 100 miles? And it's like, you start with 1 mile, right? And then you see, okay, I did that. Can I run 2? Can I run 4? And then it just snowballs, like you said, into more and more miles. But it's not like you go out one day and just knock out 30 miles after having not run for a year. So it's just slow steps, one on top of the other, and you just never know where it could lead you. It's a fun process for sure.
Yeah. And I tell you, I enhanced my view on this, I think, because I would typically finish a marathon and feel like even on the good ones, I'd feel like I got ran in the ground and very painful and not good. And I thought to go another 5 miles after that is like, it wasn't something that even in that afterglow of the marathon, when you're like, oh, I got to sign up for the next one, to do more distance, it was like, I don't know. I'd like to comfortably do a marathon first before doing a 50K. But where was I taking this? I don't even.
You were going to say like stepping on like small steps.
Oh no! Here's what I was going to say. What I was going to say was one of the things I learned from Ironman. So in Ironman, you get off the bike after you did the swim and you did the bike up and down hills for 112 miles, and you don't know when you get off that bike. You don't know what your legs are going to say to you when you start running. You have absolutely no idea. And so when I started that, and because I'm very pig-headed, and I totally admit that I rejected the Galloway method in the beginning, the run walk kind of thing, and not that I reject, and I don't begrudge people that did. I wasn't begrudging people that did it. I just, for me, it didn't fit me. I wanted to run from start to finish as much as I possibly could. It was a point of pride for me. And then when I got that first Ironman done, there was just no way that I was going to do it without walking a lot of that marathon. And so when I did, and I actually met a guy that first Ironman, met a guy, and we started doing some run walk intervals. And I'm like, man, I'm not going as slow as I thought I was going to go. I was actually going at a fairly good clip. And man, I learned a lot that day, and I've taken that, and now I've used that a little bit. And when I set my PR at a marathon a couple years ago, and I used a lot of run walk during that race. So it's like, it's one of those things, you learn that. And now I'm thinking, all right, now I can take that. If I PR'd my marathon with a run walk strategy, and then can I take that and then throw it into a 50K and make that a lot more manageable, and not worry about like not having to finish because I'm too late or too slow or whatever. And I think the answer to that, whereas before the answer would have been no because I was in so much pain from running all the time. The answer to that now is maybe, probably.
I think that's great insight. And I also think to that point, I'm sure you've probably worked with some people like this, but I know from just talking to people about marathons, half marathons, some people, the reason that they don't want to do it is, I don't know that I can run the full marathon. And I try to tell them, even if it's a half, if you have to walk 3 miles, to me, I don't know, this is just my opinion, but why not do the half, even if you walk half of it and jog the rest? Now you have a benchmark. Now you have, okay, I can physically move my body 13.1 miles. Now let's build upon that. So I'm not saying to go out there without training and do it, but if you slowly train and you have to walk a lot of it, I say, who cares? Just get it in however you need to.
No, it's a good point. In fact, a lot of the people that I coach, we work with intervals specifically, and we build up the interval. So, we might go on a long run in week 1 and, run for a minute, walk for a minute, run for a minute, walk for a minute. And then by week 20, we're running 7 minutes, we're running 8 minutes, we're walking 1 minute. And all of a sudden your pace goes from, 18 or 19 minutes per mile to like 13 or 14. And it's, hey, now you've got a respectable marathon finish if you want to go and do that. And you can, it all builds on itself. And, it might be one of those things where if you go out and you run as far as you can, maybe you can run a mile in the first week or so, but if you do the run walk method, then you can do 3 or you can do 4, or you can do, whatever, you might be able to go a lot further. And that's all building that time on your feet and all, all that stuff, that good stuff that gets you to finish a 100-mile race like yours.
I mean, that's it. And so everybody knows, it wasn't like I was running 9-minute miles for 100 miles. I mean, there was plenty of walking involved in that 100 miles, because really, just like you said, I mean, you almost have to. I know for me, I have to. My body was not going to let me jog 100 miles straight. So I love that run walk idea. And I think maybe it's like our male egos that just want us to run the whole time and not walk. I know that hits me sometimes. You can't walk, you wuss. And I'm like, yeah, I'm walking a little bit of this.
And it is funny you say that, because this is my theory. All right. And I know I got to let you go here, but so here's my theory is that, well, especially in male culture growing up, if you play sports, you play basketball, football, baseball, soccer, whatever it may be. If your coach tells you to go run a lap, run a mile, whatever they tell you. Well, what would happen to you if you walked? And it's not good, right? You're going to have to run more. You're going to have to do push-ups. You're going to have to do some other punishment. So it's ingrained in our brains that we have to run, or else it doesn't count, or else it doesn't matter, or else you're in trouble, or else it's a punishment. So I think, and granted, that could also apply to females, especially I think female sports now, as it gets more and more aggressive in training and coaching. Where maybe in my generation there wasn't a lot of like militant coaches in the female area, but there were more in males. But now I think it's probably more equivalent. But I think that's where it stems from for me. I think it's that playing sports as a kid and thinking that I'm going to get in trouble if I walk, and now it just
Oh,
what do you think of that?
I never thought of that. I think that I'm going right to my basketball, and we go on the track in the summer and have to run a mile, and you had to run. Like, you actually had to have the jogging or running motion, or like you said, what's the punishment? Oh, you sit over there for a minute, then you run another mile. I mean, yeah, I think there's a lot of, that's good insight. I never thought of that, but I think you're right.
Yeah. It's, I don't know. I just came up with it. Well, it's a funny thing because people get defensive, and I think rightfully so. People get defensive who use that method, that run walk method. They get defensive and say, "Hey, so what you're telling me I didn't run a marathon?" Because they walked. And you know what? No, I'm not saying that. Like, I'm just saying that for me, I wanted to run the full distance, and people get defensive and they get angry at each other. And it's kind of like a silly argument, I think, because we all just want everyone to run faster and do better and do good for yourself. And who is anyone else to tell you what your goals are and whether or not they're, that they're right or they're wrong. I don't think that makes any sense. But I've come full circle in the run walk, in that whole strategy and again, not that I begrudged anyone that did it. It just wasn't for me. And now I embrace it.
And so, I think we could talk about that for 15 minutes, but I can't help but think, like, you're talking about the you versus you mentality, I think, which I love that. So anybody listening or watching, for so many years, I thought I'd see somebody and be like, oh, I want to run as fast as they can. Well, forget that. Like, let me run as fast as I can, then figure out where that bar is, and then slowly try to get better. I think you made a great point there. And comparison is the thief of happiness, and just compare you against you, right? Beat yourself from the day before, and that's it.
Yeah, well, you think about 55,000 people run the New York City Marathon. What the comparison is unhappiness. Well, if there's two winners, that means there's 54,998 right upset people. Yeah. But that's not the case. It's a different kind of sport for sure. I always look at it like basketball, baseball, all those sports. They're like a zero-sum game. It's like you win or you lose, and that's it. But with this, it's like you can just root for everybody. Unless you're in contention for the top prize, and there's not many of us that are on a percentage basis. But unless you're doing that, I think it's just kind of sport that everyone can embrace and everyone can support one another. So listen, Matt, I don't want to keep it too much longer here. I know I said I'd let you go soon, and you got other things to do. So let's wrap it up here. Where can we find you? What did I miss? Is there anything, the charity? Let's plug the charity a little bit more. What do you got for us? Yeah.
So the charity is Young Adult Survivors United. So it's yasurvivors.org. If anybody wants to check that out, you click on events and you can actually donate to this miles challenge that I'm doing right now. I'm very active on Instagram. So it's just my name at Matt Scoletti, and I'm sure you'll have the spelling and all that in there, so you can look it up. Send me a message. I have a podcast as well called Living the Dream Podcast, and just doing like you're doing, just trying to promote positivity and inspiration versus some of the other negative things going on in the world. So I would say Instagram, check me out. If you want to donate to the cause, feel free. And if you do, I will make a video. I make a video for everybody that donates, just thanking you, and I'll put it up on social media because there's just been an insane amount of generous people in the world, and it puts a smile on my face. So, yeah, Instagram me up. Check it out.
Awesome. Well, listen, good luck finishing your challenge for August. I hope you get all those miles in, and good luck with your future endeavors, potentially with Ironman or triathlon or whatever you decide to do. This has been a great conversation. I really appreciate your time.
I appreciate you having me, and we'll be talking about Ironman because I'm
All right.
seeking out your guidance, my friend.
All right, sounds good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, Matt Scoletti is doing some amazing things for some amazing causes. It was great to have you on the show and listen to what you have going on. For everyone else, we'll be back again later this week with another podcast. We have John Martin coming for our happy hour on Friday night, 7:30 Eastern time. Join that if you want to. He's an awesome motivational speaker. And until then, remember, every day is an ordinary day unless you make it extraordinary. So get after it, guys.